So don't ask if your dreams are crazy. Ask if they're crazy enough.
The new Nike campaign features Colin Kaepernick people along with the slogan.
But I think Nike's on the right side of history.
Oh no. No, this isn't good. People are happy, excited even. I gotta ruin this for everybody. Oh my god, I'm late for bus. Oh no. Whoa! Sorry I'm late. Let's talk about Nike and Colin Kaepernick, because I think we have a problem. It's not the ad itself. That was brilliant. Uplifting, timely, emotional, and it's great to see Kaepernick's message being broadcast to such a massive audience. I more have a problem with the company behind the ad and its intention. You see, I don't think Nike cares about your politics or social issues. It does care about your money though, and that's why all of this is happening. This is buzz. I know, I'm no fun. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. It's a brilliant slogan, right? Well, let's come back to that. Don't get me wrong, I think any means of highlighting the issues of police brutality and discrimination against minorities is worthwhile. And Nike has proven it's willing to wade into that conversation. But does that make it a moral company? Well, to answer that question, we gotta look at what Nike doesn't like talking about. You know where I'm going with this, right? Okay, let's both say it at the same time. Ready? 1, 2, 3. The exploitation of cheap labor and child labor and its refusal to comply with international standards or an international public outcry despite decades of damning investigations and reports into its illegal practices. Yes, exactly. In other words, sweatshops. Since the early 90s, when news first broke about how Nike actually makes its shoes, and the company has been desperately trying to change its image. But there's one man who's been standing in their way. Jim Keedy. Let's talk about his story. Keedy was working as an assistant coach for St. John University's soccer team back in 1998 when he started reading reports into how Nike uses child labor and sweatshops to make its shoes and clothing. When his school received $3.5 million from Nike to rep its logo on his jerseys, he refused to wear it. He also started publicly calling out Nike to take responsibility for its actions and its practices and change them.
I cannot and will not be a walking billboard for a company that consistently chooses to maximize its profits over respecting basic human rights and human dignity. And St. John's response was, you're wearing this equipment and you're dropping this issue, or you resign.
This all didn't go down too well for him. Eventually he was forced to resign from the team, but he became more determined than ever to keep fighting the company until it changed. Up until then, Nike had denied that it was using sweatshops in Asia and Latin America, even though they practically pioneered this entire system. But in 1998, their founder, Phil Knight, was forced to publicly admit that it was all true, only after a global outcry, protests, declining sales, and boycotts. And he promised that the company would change. Except that didn't really happen. Some things changed, yes. Nike brought in independent investigators into its factories to make sure that the workers that they were outsourcing were treated fairly and paid properly. And slowly, that story went away. But Jim Keedy didn't. He spent the last 16 years traveling to those factories, documenting what was going on, documenting their conditions, and keeping Nike on its feet.
We went and lived in a worker's slum in a 9x9 cement box, rat-infested with open sores. I can't walk away from that. There's 500,000 workers in need of justice. It may take my entire lifetime, and we still may not see the justice come.
Remember the slogan? And over the last few years, that heat has turned up again on Nike. Turns out the abuses are still happening. The system of sweatshops is largely still in place. In 2016, they started blocking those same investigators from accessing their factories, including one factory in Han Sai, Vietnam, where workers apparently suffered wage theft and verbal abuse and labored for hours in temperatures well over the legal limit of 90 degrees to the point that they would collapse at their sewing machines. Last week, Keedy wrote an article outlining his thoughts on Nike's new ad campaign. I am deeply disappointed that Nike is attempting to co-opt Colin's actions in order to sell more shoes that are still made in sweatshop conditions by mostly young women of color in Vietnam, Indonesia, and China. And it's not just the factories that Nike has a problem with. Back in April, the New York Times published a massive expose in which they interviewed 50 women who had worked or were working currently at Nike's offices. They described the work culture that prevented many women of moving up the corporate ladder, a number of sexual harassment claims that were ignored, work dinners that ended up going to strip clubs, an exec that tried to kiss one of his female employees, a woman who had her breasts commented on in an email to her. The list was extensive, and the expose led to the firing of 11 Nike executives from several offices. Yes, 11 of them quit. It came at the height of the Me Too movement and gutted the company's reputation both in public and on the stock market. It lost 2% of its share value as a result, and the company went into hyperdrive to try and repair its image. And 5 months later, lo and behold...
So don't ask if your dreams are crazy. Ask if they're crazy enough.
Bold move, right? Maybe not. Contractually, the company is obliged to serve the interests of its shareholders. Its bottom line at the end of the day is to make money for those who invest in it, to protect its value on the stock market and keep its profit margins where they need to be. And so to take a risk like this on an ad that would be very divisive, that will turn some of its customers against it, it has to be a calculated risk, with the goal to help the company boost its image and sales. And guess what? That risk paid off. Despite the media's focus on the backlash to the ad and the dozens who decided to set their shoes on fire in protest, the company's sales shot through the roof. They went up by 30%. It's also reported they created more than $163 million worth of free ad revenue in the days that followed. So if you, like me, shared this post, then you made the Nike marketing execs very happy. Here's what 4C marketing analyst Aaron Goldman had to say. You can be darn sure that Nike has done its research and knows what will move its product and who this campaign will resonate with. They are the ones Nike decided will be its future customers. So, if others are getting upset, Nike has planned for that. And it doesn't care. Nike knew that not everyone was going to be on board with putting Colin Kaepernick on an international platform. It knew it was going to be controversial, make people angry. It also knew that for its target market, it will make the company look bold and daring. No. Colin. I'm gonna make a change. For once in my life. It's gonna feel real good. Gonna make a difference. Gonna make it right. Get the marketing team on the phone.
Mr. Knight, after we conducted a dozen focus groups and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of market research, we've concluded young Nike customers are more likely to be concerned with police brutality and gun control and see Colin Kaepernick as a heroic figure. Our research shows they would be more likely to buy Nike shoes if they were attached to a social issue like this.
Well, gosh darn it, let's make some change.
Sir, why are you still wearing your PJs?
Oh. And it's not the first time a corporation has tried to bandwagon on a social issue for self-promotion. Remember Pepsi's hilarious disaster of an ad featuring a clearly oblivious Kendall Jenner? Of course, that backfired spectacularly when people realized how stupid and tone-deaf the ad was. And then you guys went and made Kendall cry.
If I knew that this was going to be the outcome, like, I would have never done something like this, but you don't know when you're in the moment, and like...
How could you? But basically the ad flopped because it was an obvious attempt at tapping into the anti-Trump protests that were happening at the time. I mean, you literally thought that stopping a police crackdown with a can of Pepsi was gonna make people think your drink was cool. Really, Pepsi? Really? There's a bunch of other examples. From Apple's Feel Good Earth campaign highlighting our need to preserve the environment.
Underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the only home we've ever known.
Hypocrites! To this ad from Vicks featuring a young Indian girl taken in by a transgender woman.
Ye hai meri mummy.
And there is a reason for all this. The earned brand study by PR firm Eldman found that 57% of customers would buy a brand or boycott it based on its position on a social issue they believe in. And in an age where viral content is gold, companies are forever competing to make advertising that strikes us on a deeper level, whether to tap into our sentimentalities or appeal to a social issue we feel strongly about. That makes us share their content and buy their stuff. Nike's ad does make us feel good, and it should. The message in it is powerful, that sacrifice and hard work are not easy paths to undergo. But what keeps you fighting is a belief that grips you, something that shakes you to your core. I got goosebumps the first time I watched it and realized that Colin Kaepernick was speaking that entire time. It's a beautifully crafted ad, and strikes at a precise moment that could shape the history of how sports and politics are viewed in the United States. But we can't overlook the messenger. This is the same company that signed a deal with the NFL back in March to provide all of their jerseys and gear. The same NFL who's currently being sued by Kaepernick for colluding to end his football career. Nike is playing both sides, and they're well aware of this. And at the end of the day, the company isn't heroic. It's a corporation, one of the world's biggest, and its hands are still stained with the blood of thousands exploited for cheap labor to make its shoes more profitable. A practice it's refusing to rectify despite scandal after scandal. Its toxic workplace environment back home filtering into every department that eventually came crumbling down on its execs amid the Me Too movement. For more than 20 years, Nike has desperately tried to keep its business practices separate from its public image. And at a time when its newest market is a generation of young idealistic people switched onto social issues and idealizing those who aren't afraid to make bold statements, why wouldn't it capitalize on this? Should we support Colin Kaepernick's cause, his tireless fight for justice that cost him nearly everything? 100%. Should we buy into Nike's campaign that makes us feel like it's standing on the picket lines with us and sacrificing its own business for what's right? Hell no. Nike doesn't care about Colin Kaepernick, or police brutality, or making political statements. Nike cares about money. Nike only cares about money. So before we go out to buy or burn a pair of Nike sneakers, we should remember that this is not about politics. This is about capitalism. I'm gonna make a change for once in my life. It's gonna feel real good. I'm gonna make a change. All right. Hey guys, if you enjoyed what we had to say, then like and subscribe. And if you want to find out more about the Nike campaign and the reaction to it, check out my bro Ahmed's video, who we put out last week on Raw. Should be over here somewhere. You stay classy.